Welcome, everybody, to the Huddle, KG9's weekly streaming sports talk show. Not every single week in the summer as we, take a few weeks off. We do about 40 a year. So if we're going to take a couple off, we're going to do it in the summer when we're not talking about U of A football and basketball games. But we try not to let 2 weeks go without doing a show. Joined always by Pat Paris. Pat, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, good, Jason. Yeah, you need some time off to relax, and what better time than the summer when things aren't happening on a daily basis. Although you've got football going now, you've got a lot of sports going on now, and just got done with the Olympics. So
we'll start with our Huddle poll question before we get to some other topics, and that talks about Arizona football and captains. I don't know if captains are a big deal to you, Pat. They are to some people, they aren't to others. So I put the question out here: who should be the offensive Arizona football captains? And the reason why I put offensive is because a lot of times, teams will have defensive captains, special teams captains. But some coaches go game by game. Some coaches go by the season. Some coaches aren't really big fans of captain. So we got an A, B, or C. If Arizona was going to have offensive captains this year, should it be Noah and T-Mac for the whole season? Should they rotate by game to get other players involved? Or, hey, listen, this just doesn't matter. Captains are overrated. Pat, I'm going with A. Noah and T-Mac should be the captains of this team. Go ahead.
We don't always agree. In fact, we rarely agree. But
we're going to disagree later in the show, by the way.
Yeah, we'll disagree on other topics. I do agree with this one. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. Is I always like to, who are the guys that have had the most impact and get the attention of the rest of that unit? So in this case, it'd be offense, right? So who are the guys that are the leaders? Who are the guys that everybody looks up to and then listens to? And clearly, in the offseason, when Jed Fish left and Brent Brennan came aboard, it was Noah Fafita and Tedero McMillan that got the rest of that group to say, for the most part, hey, we're going to stay. You should stay. And they stayed through spring camp when they could have left during that little window as well in the transfer portal. So I think it's Noah and T-Mac. Now, if you wanted, you could rotate a guy or two, maybe one of the
Are you in favor of rotating game by game, or are you in favor of, hey, before the season starts, here's the captain who's
if I were a head coach, I probably would look at it like, all right, I'm going to pick two guys from offense, two guys from defense, and a special teams guy, and maybe a sixth captain. That's a lot of captains, by the way. Maybe a sixth captain where that it's the guy that, almost like the guy that gets the scholarship midway through the season or something like that. Almost like every week, it's the guy who really stood out in practice that week, who maybe isn't even a starter, but deserves to go out there. Maybe you do something like that.
All right, so we'll check on those results later in the show. Arizona football starts on the 31st against New Mexico. The first game for new head coach Brent Brennan. We'll get back to Brennan in a second and talk about him a little later. But I had a conversation, Pat, recently with Alex Bowman, NASCAR driver from Tucson, who we're going to find out in this little interview here, hasn't been back in Tucson in quite some time. I can't believe how long it's been. I guess he's a North Carolinian now, but recently got his first win in Chicago. And so we chatted about that and a couple of other topics. So Pat, here, and we'll play this and then talk about it afterwards. Here's my recent conversation with NASCAR driver of the 48 Chevrolet Camaro, Alex Bowman.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was obviously great to be able to do, coming off of a couple injuries and tough years. I think getting a win was good for me and good for the whole team, obviously, but just meant a lot to be able to overcome those things. So getting it at a street course like Chicago was super awesome as well. I hadn't won a road course before, and we'd been close plenty of times. So meant a lot to get back to victory lane. It had been way too long. So glad to be able to do that.
You mentioned that you hadn't won a road race before, but you've actually been doing a lot better on the road courses. How much confidence does that plus the win give you going into the playoffs when you have a road race like Watkins Glen in the postseason?
Yeah, I think, Watkins Glen is kind of the last road course that I don't feel super confident going to. The rest of them, I feel like we've had really good runs and honestly shots at winning most of them. Even the Roval we've been really strong at. So got to figure out Watkins Glen a little bit, but definitely have more confidence. I wasn't super confident going to Chicago either. But we were really fast all weekend. So I'm excited. I think our road course program has been really good and I've been slowly but surely figuring them out for sure.
It was interesting at the end of the race where you got bumped by Bubba Wallace, and you kind of handle it pretty well. You have a very non-confrontational style. You kind of just, played it off. Oh, he barely hit me. He had every right to. Where does your non-confrontational kind of style come from?
Um, I don't know. I honestly like if I would have been mad about it, I would have said I was mad about it. I thought that he I spun him out earlier in the day, so I understood him being mad and us winning probably didn't make that any better, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm not a super confrontational person, and that was just a situation where I kind of called it how I saw it. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Seen some people saying they thought I had my belts loose and stuff like that, which I didn't. None of my stuff was loose. My window net was down, but that was it. So I think the wall being right there made it look bigger than it really was. And yeah, kind of just called it how I saw it.
You did have a stretch run earlier in the season when you were pretty hot. I think it was like maybe 6 top tens in a row. What is it going to take to do well in the postseason? Obviously, you got tough competition. Your teammates are competition. Is it just about being consistent, getting on a run, a little bit of luck, or a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of everything. We've had really since Chicago, we've been pretty solid. Obviously winning Chicago, ran third at Pocono, and had a shot at running top five at Indy, and the strategy just didn't go our way, and then got crashed there at the end. So, I think getting good at the right time is really important. So those last 10 weeks obviously matter a lot. We had a really great playoff run in 2020 and a really terrible summer. So, I think sometimes while momentum does matter, I don't think you have to be perfect, on that 11th week. It's the 10th week on that matters, but just trying to be there. And obviously it's a really diverse group of racetracks. So can't really focus on one thing. You have to try to be good everywhere. And I feel like we're getting to that point. Our short track stuff needs to improve a little bit, but we're definitely gaining on it. And hopefully we'll be in a good spot going into the start of the playoffs and go from there.
Bowman and his team sponsor, Ally, have a program somewhat similar to that of KGUN 9 parent company EW Scripps. While we have the If You Give a Child a Book campaign, Alex reads to kids about financial literacy. What have you learned about financial literacy, and how much do you enjoy reading to kids?
Yeah, that's been a super cool program with Ally. It's not really covered a ton. So just trying to help some kids learn about money to help set up their future and kind of have more of an understanding of things is cool. We just read Planet Z and the Money Tree. Ally's done a really good job at putting just enough really big words in there that are huge tongue twisters that I embarrass myself in front of a classroom full of kids on a regular basis. Obviously you went to Ironwood Ridge, but you've got a very busy schedule traveling around the country doing appearances and of course racing. Have you been back to Tucson recently, and how often are you able to get back here? Yeah, honestly, I haven't been back in quite a while. I think like November of 2020 was the last time I was there.
Are you
So
serious? It's been that long.
yeah, it's been a long time for sure. My family was out here for the 600, and we were kind of talking about different Tucson things because we're all kind of out, like my mom's side of the family at least is all out of Tucson at this point. But yeah, definitely cool place to grow up, and I'll have to get back soon.
Sorry, I muted myself there for a quick second. That was Alex Bowman, driver of the 48. Pat, we chatted recently. Sounds like his mom's side of the family has moved away from Tucson. That's kind of
Yeah.
what I got from that. But I believe his dad still owns a body shop here, if I'm not mistaken. His dad's kind of private. I don't think he really likes to be interviewed that much. So I was a little surprised he hasn't been back, but still something for the town to be proud of. I mean, how many NASCAR drivers has Tucson had? I know Phoenix has Michael McDowell, who's really been in the sport now a long time and is really a popular driver and is fantastic with the sponsors. Won a Daytona 500, of course, made his name with that crash at Texas Motor Speedway in qualifying back in 2008. I think it was his second start when he flipped over several times and was okay. But still cool to have a driver from Tucson. And, sounds like he's had some injuries the last couple of years. Concussion and back injury, and it looks like he's on the other side of it. And that win kind of a few weeks ago at Chicago cemented that.
Yeah, and I think the whole thing about not coming back too soon, and you might have just touched on it, not even knowing that is part of the reason. But he went through all those injuries, and he was kind of, maybe it was just sticking right around the garage in North Carolina and his house there, and certainly, his father's gone to visit him and gone to watch races and things. So it's not as if he doesn't still have that Tucson connection, but getting back here just hasn't been a top priority yet, and maybe when his racing days are done, we'll see him a little bit more, but he's still got a lot of races to go. 8 wins now in NASCAR. And,
Right.
Jason, he's one of those guys that might just win a championship.
Gotta get hot at the right time.
All you have to do is get
And
hot.
lucky, as he said. Yeah,
Yeah.
and lucky too. He's got the same equipment as some of his teammates.
That's it. I was just going to say,
Yeah.
he's got a great ownership. He's got a great crew. There's no reason why he doesn't have the ability to win it. It's just whether or not he will, and it's really hard to win a championship, obviously.
All right, I thought Pat would touch on something else nationally because it's kind of, I think, a little bit of an issue here, or at least something that I've noticed, and it has to do with college football and reporting injuries. And in late 2022, Arizona had an offensive lineman named Jordan Morgan. He tore his ACL. Everybody knew he tore his ACL. It's not a secret. He rehabs, comes back, has a terrific season, and is a first-round draft pick by the Packers. But now, and I like the way that was handled. Now with Brent Brennan here for Arizona football, there's this aura of secrecy. I'm not sure really that's the best way to go, Pat. I believe in transparency. We have a situation in the spring where the arguably the best player on the team, Teteroa McMillan, is hurt seriously, but nobody knows. They don't put out an injury or a statement or anything like that. Nobody's allowed to talk about the injury. The guy's in a boot and a scooter, so we have to maybe guess broken foot, right? We don't know. Okay. And now here we are several months later, and the guy who is going to be the starting left tackle to replace Jordan Morgan, Raymond Polito, he is, quote, unavailable this year. And you asked about it to Brent Brennan, and he says, we ain't talk about injuries. Come on, man. You know what? It's almost a matter of time before these guys are paid more than NIL. They're already paid NIL. They're quasi-professional athletes. Their scholarship is more than $50,000 when you take into account tuition, the board that they get, for the stipend for housing, the food. That's north of $50,000. Okay. And you don't think an NFL team's going to want to know what Teteroa McMillan's injury was? You don't think
the NFL team will find out what Teteroa McMillan's injury?
So what is he keeping all this a secret for?
Because, Jason, until there's a rule, and I know the SEC's kicking around that, right? They're the ones that are probably leading the
Sarkisian, the head coach at Texas, is in favor of an injury report like they have in the NFL.
Yeah, and until that happens, you're missing out on. And there's Sarkisian, the Texas coach, and he's the one pushing for this. But until you get that, so why would you let your opponents know what to look for or to go after with an injury? Why
Does
would
it really help an opponent to know that Raymond Polito has this or that? He's not going to play.
Well, that might be a whole nother story. You don't know what's going on there.
That could be non-injury related.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Now, as far as Teteroa McMillan goes, that's between Teteroa McMillan and the training staff, and then the head coach of whether they want that out or not. I go back to first and foremost, if you don't have to report them, why would you report them? Now, as a media member, of course we want to know, and as a fan, of course you want to know.
It becomes a cat and mouse game, like what Rich Rodriguez played, where he said, I'll put out the injury report on Thursday. Well, why did he put out the injury report on Thursday? Because that was the day after the final media availability, right? And then how he put it out was not for the media or I don't care about me. It's for the fans. It's not for the media or the fans. He put it out for the opposing team, right? To just like throw them all. It's stupid. It's a cat and mouse game. If everybody's transparent, then everybody has the same level playing field. I'm not saying, Pat, Arizona should report the injuries and the other team shouldn't. I'm saying everybody should be honest. Transparency is the way to go, and everybody should report the injuries.
And I'm okay with that if that's the rule. But if it's not the rule, then why would you be the only ones or one of the only ones that gets out ahead of it? And
how did that hurt Arizona football last year?
What's that?
How did that hurt any team in the past by saying the guy's hurt? How does that hurt anybody?
Well, what I go back to is what they do in the NHL, and that is, they're so general with their upper body, lower body, and what you're trying to avoid is letting somebody know where, especially a skill position player, you don't want them to know exactly what that issue might be, because they might target that. They may go after a guy and say, all right, he's got an ankle, let's go. When he's down on the pile, go after that ankle. I mean, there have been bounties in the NFL, look no further than New Orleans Saints and what they got into. That happens sometimes. And so I'm not saying that's going to happen in the Big 12 and to the University of Arizona. I just say, until they make me do it, I'm going to be as secretive as I can about exactly the injury that a guy's got. If he's healthy, he's healthy. If he's not, I'll tell you he's not. He's not going to play.
It makes it into a bigger deal than it already is. Like here we're talking about it. We wouldn't be talking about it if they just said, okay, Tedder Millen broke his leg, broke his foot. He had surgery. He's going to be 100% by the season opener. We're just going to be a little bit cautious the first week of training camp and just milk him, kind of in gradually, and then it'll be fine. I don't think anybody's going to go after his broken foot from before. It should be already healed.
Well, that's an individual case, but they did say that they expect him to be back for in time for the season. I mean, they didn't hide that fact. It wasn't like, well, this is a 1-year injury and we're not going to see him again till next spring or something like that.
Yeah. If an offensive lineman is playing with a cast on his left arm or hand or something, I mean, we can figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
I think where we could find some common ground, Pat, is that this should be mandatory for everybody. Everybody should have to say, what the injury is. And just kind of go from there. I remember a funny situation. Remember the whole Alonzo Trier? This wasn't an injury, but the whole Alonzo Trier situation. Yep. So he's coming back, and he was going to come back for the UCLA game at UCLA, right. But they didn't want anyone to know he was going to come back for the UCLA because they wanted the element of surprise. Well, sure enough, the night before, everybody knows that Alonzo Trier is going to come back. And that's, by the way, we'll get to this in a second. That's not Trier, but we'll get there. It's not bad. My bad. The night before, everyone knows he's going to come back. They still put up 90-something points on UCLA. It didn't make any difference.
Didn't make any difference.
Didn't make any difference. So I think we could find some common point. My bad on the basketball. We can go to that now.
Well, hold on, real quick. One last thought on this, Jason. It is what drives a lot of things in sports right now, more than anything. What drives a lot of sports viewership and eyes on the sport is betting, right? Gambling is, and to that extent, those who bet on the games, you and I do not, but those who bet on games would sure like to know if the quarterback at Oklahoma is 100% healthy or not. Or the guy at Alabama is going to play.
That's the reason to have it, right? Yeah, that's the best reason.
So if that's your argument, then let's be transparent in that way too. We need to say the reason we're doing this is not for a competitive advantage, disadvantage. We're going to try to make it so everybody has all the information they need for their ability to enjoy the game. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so that's just a thought I had. We'll see how that develops, and I think that we might have a rule change down the road, but we'll see. Anyway, before we finish up with the huddle poll question, I did want to show the basketball and Arizona and UCLA. We knew this was going to happen. I mean, it first happened with Tommy Lloyd saying that he wanted to renew it, and they already are playing this year at the Footprint Center. We're going to have a game the following season, 25-26 in Las Vegas, and then one in the 27 season in LA. So it's nice that they're renewing the rivalry. I think for the Arizona fans, you would like to have one in Tucson. I think they consider this one in Phoenix maybe a quasi, home game for Tucson. But you want one at McHale Center, because I tell you what, Pat, when you are in McHale Center an hour before tip-off and it's UCLA, you can feel it. And I wasn't imagining it. Okay, when I was in that arena. An hour before tip-off against UCLA, and they're both, good ranked teams and all, it is a completely different feel.
Yeah. But this is all driven by money, Jason. And remember, you're only allowed so many home games, but you're allowed those neutral site games too. And I think that for Arizona, it probably makes sense financially to have a neutral site game where not only does the arena hold more people, you're going to charge more money for those seats, and you get a better TV deal because it's national television. I think it adds up more to, that's why Phoenix and Vegas look like more appealing things. And even if this third game we're talking about is in LA at, say, Staples Center, that's bigger, going to get more money, more, and it's a neutral site as well. I just think that's where that drives. It's the money that drives this as much as far as where the site of the games is more than anything.
Yeah, it's just kind of similar to when we went to all those neutral site tournaments, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that's where they had their big
Well,
non-conference
even
games.
this past season, remember, wasn't it like Alabama was in Phoenix, and they had a lot of
Duke is coming to McKell Center this year, right? Yeah,
yes, because they went to Duke
yeah.
last year. Yeah.
So
But for the most part, a lot of those big marquee matchups between power conference teams, they try to do neutral sites if they can. It just in December, November, especially December, it sets up really well for a national TV audience.
yeah, you want that one big game. I'm looking forward to Duke coming in, and that should be exciting for sure. So yeah. All right, let's finish it up with the huddle poll question. See what the results we had. I think a lot of people are going to pick A, but it should be kind of interesting. I would have guessed maybe a little bit more for A. So a lot of people feel captains are overrated. I remember, Pat, when Derek Jeter was named the Yankees captain in 2003, and everyone was like, what's the big deal? He's been the de facto captain for years, So some people think it's overrated. I don't think it is. I think to have a leader on the floor, a leader on the court, leader on the field is a big deal. So,
well, in
I
football,
was just kind of curious what everybody would pick.
in football, you need at least one captain to go out there and for the coin toss.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
you have the Arizona's had honorary captains in the past. Nick Foles was one last year.
yeah, they usually have one former Wildcat come back, and yeah, but I don't think they're overrated. I understand what people are saying is you don't need to put too much emphasis on it, but I think they're a necessity, and
these guys deserve it.
Yeah, and they're deserving of it, and take that captainship away, and then you got guys moping around going, "What do you mean I'm not captain? I'm the starting quarterback and the star wide receiver. Why aren't I a captain?" I'm not saying that's the only reason you give it to them, but it's certainly a reason that they deserve it, and it's nice. I mean, it just makes guys feel good about where they are on the team.
Yeah. All right. So, Arizona football starts in 2.5 weeks, and we'll see what they do as far as captains. And next huddle poll question, maybe we'll do the over under for how many wins they get this year.
Sounds good. You were right.
I didn't think 10 though. I really
you were closer than I was.
I really felt confident in above 6.
Yeah.
But
you don't generally see that massive of an improvement from one year to the next in any sport, let alone college football. Now you can see a team drop when they lose a lot of players. I understand that, but barring any major movement with the with guys coming and going, you didn't expect it to be that big of a jump, and it certainly was.
Yeah. All right. This has been The Huddle, KGUN9 streaming sports talk show. For Pat Paris, I'm Jason Barr. If we don't see you next week, we'll see you the week after. Thanks, everybody, for watching and tuning in, and we'll see you next time.